All right, this is to teach you how to use the division of labor document. Oh, that's the attendance. Sorry, wrong place. The division of labor documents are going to be found. Right now, you have one in your team folder, so there's a bit of a dark theme going on with my screen. But anyway, um, you can find this. Let's just look random team project D. There you go. It always has a DOL, and I put MSC. The milestones are named MSC, MSE, MSR, MSV. I don't know. It works, sort of, for me. Anyway, so I'm going to use an example one to show you, well, a couple of example ones to show you how this works. I've got a little example one that I created here. So this is the standard example one. There are 3 people per team in general. We might not end up always having 3 people per team, so I'm trying to prepare for that possibility. What this is basically your to-do list for your project, for the individual assignments for the project. This is the first assignment for the project, and it's a weird one because you won't reuse this information. The next one will start using the data that will build towards your final project. This first one is just kind of practice, which is what I told a couple of teams to just make data up when they got a variable that didn't quite work for this assignment. Um, because this is not that important to have the data perfect. What is important is to learn how to do this stuff. All right, so this is your to-do list, and this is where your grades will come from. Actually, let's hang on. Let's undo this stuff. Well, let's see it first. First, you have names. You can change these if you want. Like if somebody's name isn't Alex, these are the 3 people in your team. You can put different names. Like you could put Breck there and Alex there, and see how that kind of changed the stuff down here. Um, Maybe Chris's name isn't Chris. Maybe Chris's name is Jonathan or some Jonathan. All right, I'm going with it. It's just Jonathan. So Jonathan is there. While we're at it, let's just make this into Blaminda. Okay, now I'm just goofing off. All right, so this, wherever there's an X, whatever's on that row, you will be graded on how well it's done. Now, so there's a bunch of information on that row. So Blaminda, well, a bunch of people together are doing this. Let's find something that Blaminda alone is doing right here. So this is for MSC2. So I've broken this milestone up into 3 pieces. The first is planning and collecting your data, and it says MS part here, MSC1. And the second part is getting that into your document, into your code book, like creating and making the code book. And then MS3 is presentation, so that take this in little chunks because I think we're done right now as of this particular semester. We're done with this part, and we're getting started on this. So let's just say take something that, okay, Blaminda isn't doing anything all by herself for number one. So for the first part, collecting, this says observe and record ordinal. So that, and there's some description, collect data for the ordinal variable. So your team decided on an ordinal variable, and Alex here, as I've specified this, Alex is responsible for observing and recording this data. Now, rearrange the names so it fits better what you did, and you can also change things. I've made it so that you can, like, put some different X's and stuff into most of these, so that if this doesn't reflect what you actually did. For future assignments, I'm going to try and have this done before you start, so we don't have to have, well, so we don't have to have so much flexibility, because the flexibility becomes a little confusing sometimes, because I'm trying to balance this pretty closely. I want these to be within like about 5 points of each other, and that means that people are probably doing very similar amounts of work. But if you think that I've got that wrong, I'm very open to that. Just let me know. But for right now, let's just see how this works. So when I grade this paper, I'm going to look, okay, we were looking at this row right here. I'm going to look at the paper, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to grade it, and like entering data for the ordinal variable. If it looks like that data is, collect data and then enter it in the Excel spreadsheet, I'm probably just going to look all together for those 2 things. Like those are Alex's responsibilities for that. It's pretty hard for me to grade this thing. So there are a couple things every once in a while. If I can't really grade it, I'm just going to give you points and assume it was okay unless there's some glaring problem I can see. So Alex is going to receive some points for this. Now, I'm going to score everything on a score of 1 to 10. So I go through, oh, this is still protected. So I can't change everything. Like I can't do the scores right now because the sheet is protected. Let me undo the protection. There's a thing you can do with this. Protection is turned off now. So I can grade. So I'm just looking at these things right here for Alex. Let's say I think Alex did, you know, an amazing job on these things. Then overall, oops, it's supposed to be a 10, not a 19. It's only supposed to go to 10. What's happening is down here at the bottom, a score is going to be created, and that's kind of how I go. That's kind of how things happen as I go along. I maybe Alex gets a slightly lower score on this. I think maybe she only did like the way the code book was created. Maybe it was only a 9. Well, out of 10. So actually, I'm saying Alex is a she because I'm married to one, but Alex could be a man too. So anyway, these are going to be Alex's scores. Now these scores are not as important because this estimated work is how important those scores are, how much they contribute to a person's grade, because some things take more work than others. And I start from a baseline of a 2 or 3, and I'm thinking up to 10, but I might go higher if there's some really, really important stuff, but probably 1 through 10. So this is, medium important, it's a 3. That's a little slightly less important, it's a 2. So that 10 will matter a little bit more in Alex's grade for this assignment than this 10, because this 10 is for a slightly more important thing. And this 9 is going to matter even more because that's for something that has a 5. So all of these things added up are going to end up being Alex's grade. So this is Alex's to-do list, and I tried to make it so that all this stuff, like if I make a check mark here for Alex, see I said that now there's 2 things, now it says multiple, and I could delete this one, and yeah, now it's Blaminda's responsibility. I'm going to undo that. So hopefully this is going to kind of update and go along. There's some things that I think everybody probably collaborated on, this stuff here. So defining what your individuals and cases are, choosing all of your variables. That was probably everybody collaborative. But I don't want everything to be everybody collaborative. As I mentioned, I only want a small part of each assignment to be everybody gets the same grade. Everybody's going to get the same grade for these things. Like if I enter, a 10 for this and a 9 for this and a 10 for this, everybody gets whatever grade, like that amount of grade added to their grade. Everybody gets the same. So yeah, as we go down, this is your to-do list. Like if you're Blaminda, look for all the things that say Blaminda and look for all the places that have an X here. And on that row, that's what you need to do. Now, there's some things to point out. First, as I mentioned, this is in sections. And the sections hopefully are visually separated. This is pretty much done. Please let me know if the X's don't really represent what you've got. I think I left them open so that you can change some check marks there and rearrange things. I'm hoping as you do it, if I see that this gets wildly unbalanced, then I might ask you if I can, if we can find a way that everybody has balanced stuff, like maybe with stuff that isn't done quite yet, to do some compensation. And stay tuned, there'll be something for if people missed the first or the day of class when we did the collection. There's a thing about that. But anyway, so in these sections, this is the section we're working on right now. This is somebody's going to create the code book, someone's going to write the description, the general description of the individuals and cases, and then there's description and then the graphs and tables for the different variables. Each variable needs, if you look in the assignment instructions, and this is very much based on the assignment instructions, it's very tied to that. Each variable of your 4 variables needs to have a text description, just like in the example paper, and some kind of a graph or table. And then when you're done with that, then there are 3 graphs that are 2 variables at once. Don't worry, we're going to go over in class how to do this, so you won't be left out in the cold here. So 2 variables at once. And so this part is about creating all that stuff in your document. Creating the document, getting the analyses done. They're not super fancy analyses, they're just making graphs, but you're going to, drop that information in there. There will also be some information like means and standard deviations and stuff, which we haven't really learned how to do yet, but we will before this is due, don't worry. And so then the last section is the presentation itself. You can see that there's a lot of numbers here. There's not as many here, but there's a big bunch of 10s here, so I'll explain that in a second. So the presentation quality itself is not a huge part of your grade. Like if you got zeros on all the presentation quality, you'd still get like an A or a B. I don't want presentation to be the most important thing. And this is something you can change. If somebody in your team really, really absolutely does not want to talk in front of the class, because this kind of gives everybody his responsibilities for doing that. Yeah, you can take away all the X's for that person for the presentation stuff and give them to someone else. So it all needs to be done by somebody. And then that person can get some X's for something else, like maybe doing some extra work creating this stuff here. However, there's something that nobody's going to be able to escape, and that's questions. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. What that really means, see how there's three here? So Blaminda is going to be asked three questions about the project. Now, please read this, answer a question about any part of the assignment, not just your parts, plus follow-up questions. What that means is there's going to be some questions, and they'll be more or less randomly chosen, and then I will say, okay, Blaminda, here's a random question about your project. And it won't necessarily be just about the stuff that Blaminda did. It'll be about everything. Because part of the point of this, a big part of the point of this, is to make sure that everybody actually knows what's going on with their project, both what other people are doing and what they're doing. And if you can't figure out what other people are doing, I mean, that's kind of a problem. If that person is doing something that's so confusing that nobody can figure it out, well, then maybe they need a little come to Jesus or education moment, teach them how to do this stuff, or tell them, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm not going to be able to answer these questions. But it's just going to be random questions about your project. And there will be about 9 that matter for this. And so this is, do you understand your project? There, do you understand what your project is doing? There is a separate set of questions I will also ask, and those are for something else. Those are to determine whether you actually did your project. And hopefully those are incredibly easy to answer, because the only right answer is for you to explain that you actually understand what happened. Even if what happened was wrong, for the second set of questions, I'm just trying to determine if people use ChatGPT or their very favorite friend or Gemini or whatever, instead of doing it themselves. And it's very sad that I have to do this, but past 2 semesters have convinced me I probably do. So the second set of questions, and I'll try and indicate when we get to that part, and it'll happen when you're presenting also. The second set of questions, the right answer isn't for you to understand statistics. The right answer is for you to convince me and the teammates that, or the class, that you actually did the stuff that you are getting credit for doing. That you didn't copy it from a ChatGPT prompt. That you didn't, like get it from your best friend in Poughkeepsie, who's an ace at stats and did your work for you. So it's an anti-cheating, it's an academic dishonesty kind of thing. And theoretically, you could actually get a few extra points for that, because maybe your answer will see like, wow, this is cooler than I thought. I didn't understand how cool this is. I mean, that might not happen, but it could. All right, so that's how this works. Now, I'm going to do something, I'm going to show you something different. If your team had all 3 people present, you can stop listening now. So what's next is for people who had only 2 people showing up. So let's see. Here we go. I made a different division of labor document if one of the members of your team just wasn't there, because they couldn't do anything in the first part of the milestone. So I just zeroed them out. So in this example, Alex was there when we collected data. Breck was there when they collected data. Chris was not. So I'm assuming Chris did not participate at all in figuring out what your variables are. Didn't participate in collecting data, recording data. Now, if you had some weird thing going on, I should say innovative. If you had some cool innovative thing going on where Chris was actually, your missing team member was actually present on FaceTime or something and involved in the whole thing, yeah, we can change that. You won't be able to change this unless you talk to me. I went by the attendance sheet, so if the attendance sheet is wrong, please let me know. But this adjusts it so Chris can still get a good grade on the overall milestone. The milestone just gets 1 grade. I could get separate grades for each of the sections, but I'm not going to. Probably. I'm just going to say maybe some feedback for the sections in the future, because some of them get done at different times, but your overall milestone grade is just this entire thing is your milestone grade. So Chris isn't getting any grades for this stuff because they didn't show up, and they weren't, like, maybe they were sick that day, maybe their mom was in the hospital, maybe they were super high from last night, whatever, but they weren't in class, and so they didn't participate, so they can't get credit for this. And so all their work got dumped over onto Alex and Breck, and I tried to do it in a way that things are very close to similar. Alex kind of got away with a little bit, but it's not much. I mean, this estimated work is not as precise as it could be anyway. So a difference of 2 to 5 points, I don't think it makes actually any real difference. So I gave Chris more stuff to do down here. So Chris is going to do all the variable descriptions in the document to kind of compensate. And then everybody else is still doing some other stuff for that, but Chris is doing all this stuff here, all these variable descriptions and graphs, and putting them in the document. If that doesn't get done, Chris's grade is the only grade that matters. Alex and Breck, they don't have responsibilities, so their grades can't be touched by by that at all. If there are no variable descriptions, if there are no graphs for the individual variables, if there are no means and standard deviations, Alex and Brett can still get an A. Chris's grade might not do so well. So Chris is assigned to do that now. And I'm aware that maybe some people missed because they were planning on dropping the course, and next week we'll have some drops. Okay, for this first assignment, maybe you present some documents, and every once in a while there's just a big chunk missing because that person eventually dropped the class. We'll just kind of roll with that. But your grade will not be affected if you're not Chris right here. And so then I have everything else up here, just Chris, blah blah blah. So once again, if you'd like to change any of this, if these X's do not really reflect what's going on, then talk to me and we'll see if we can change it. Edit it as much as you can, but then if you're running into problems getting things balanced, like the workload up here balanced and stuff, let me know and I'll help you work on that. And I think that's about all, and I'm going to try and figure out how to stop this recording. All right.